The helicopter hovered over the clearing, its blades chopping the air into a deafening roar that swallowed every other sound. Below, the forest stretched endlessly, a patchwork of dark green broken only by a narrow strip of open land. Maya sat rigid on the bench seat, fingers locked together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She was 16, terrified of heights, and had never wanted to be in the helicopter in the first place. Mr. Halvorsen stood near the open door, one hand braced against the frame. He was her history teacher, a man who spoke endlessly about discipline and toughening kids up, words that seemed to mean something very different when directed at her. His jaw was clenched, his eyes cold. Behind him loomed Trent, a senior student who followed Halvorsen the way a shadow follows a body, laughing at his jokes, repeating his words, eager to please. You see, Maya, Halvorsen said, raising his voice over the engine, this is what happens when you don't know your place. You think the rules don't apply to you. Maya shook her head, tears blurring her vision. I didn't do anything. I just asked why. Exactly, Trent cut in, grinning. Always asking why. Always acting like you're smarter than everyone else. The field trip had been sold as an enrichment experience, a chance to observe the region from the air. But from the moment Maya boarded, something felt wrong. The comments. The looks. The way Halvorsen kept singling her out, mocking her accent, her background, the fact that she didn't laugh along. The pilot glanced back nervously, clearly uncomfortable. Sir, we should be heading back. Halvorsen ignored him. He leaned closer to Maya, his voice low and cruel. You need to learn fear. That's the only language people like you understand. Trent reached out and grabbed Maya's arm, hauling her to her feet. The wind tore at her hair as the open door yawned beside her, a hole in the world that seemed to pull her toward it. Please, she sobbed. Please don't. For a moment, there was a strange stillness, as if the helicopter itself were holding its breath. Then Halvorsen nodded once. They shoved her. The world flipped. Sky became ground. Sound vanished, replaced by a rushing silence that pressed against her ears. Maya screamed, but the scream was ripped away by the wind. She squeezed her eyes shut, certain this was the end. Then something unexpected happened. The fall slowed. The harness she wore, standard safety gear required for low-altitude observation, caught the air like a sail. The secondary chute, designed for emergency descent, deployed with a sharp jerk. Pain shot through her shoulders, but it was pain she could feel, and feeling meant she was alive. Maya descended, spinning gently now, the forest rising to meet her instead of rushing. She hit the ground hard, rolling through leaves and dirt, but she was breathing. Bruised, shaken, terrified, but alive. Above her, the helicopter lurched. What did you do? The pilot shouted. Halvorsen's face had gone pale. Trent stumbled back from the door, staring down as if he'd seen a ghost. She didn't, she's not. She's alive, the pilot yelled. You idiots, she's alive. Panic erupted. Halvorsen began shouting orders, his authority cracking. Turn around. We need to get her back up here. You think? The pilot snapped. You just pushed a student out of my aircraft. On the ground, Maya lay still, every muscle trembling. Slowly, she unbuckled the harness, hands shaking as she forced herself to stand. She looked up, shielding her eyes from the sun, and saw the helicopter circling wildly overhead. She raised her arm. In the cockpit, Trent saw it and let out a strangled sound. She's standing. She's actually standing. Halvorsen backed away as if. The sight burned him. That's not possible. But it was. And it was being recorded. Unbeknownst to them, the helicopter's internal cameras were still running, capturing every word, every shove, every moment of stunned silence after Maya didn't disappear into the forest forever. Emergency crews arrived quickly. The pilot landed in a clearing a safe distance away, hands raised the moment the doors opened. Halvorsen tried to speak, to explain, but his voice collapsed into stammers under the weight of what he'd done. Maya was wrapped in a blanket, checked by medics, her tears finally falling freely now that she was safe. She watched as Halvorsen and Trent were escorted away, their faces drained of all arrogance. Later, sitting in the back of an ambulance, Maya stared at her hands. They were scraped and shaking, but they were hers. Proof she was still here. She thought of every time she'd been told to be quiet, to be grateful, to endure. Of every laugh that followed when she spoke up. And she realized something, deep and steady beneath the fear. They had tried to erase her. They had failed. News spread fast. Questions were asked. Answers came with evidence attached. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, Maya closed her eyes, not in fear this time, but in relief, knowing that the people who thought they could silence her forever would now have to face a world where she had survived, and where the truth had landed just as safely as she had.